So, this is, a pretty new theory as compared to what we have done in the past, and well known as well. Uh, Most of you might have come across this expression previously as well, right? So structuralism, it has quite a number of facets as well, right? So we will go through some of them through this reading. So one primary notion in structuralism is this, that a literary text itself is a structure, independent of its author, right? So our conventional understanding of a literary text is like this, that whenever we read a literary text, a poem or a novel or a short story, we keep thinking about, in many cases, we keep thinking about the author. And we have this, uh, tacit understanding in ourselves that somebody wrote this work. Sometimes we are very consciously aware of the author, sometimes we are not very consciously aware of the author. But we cannot get rid of this thought that somebody wrote it. Okay, somebody wrote this text. So text basically is an expression. It is a creative expression of an author. And when we are reading the text, we are engaging in a kind of conversation with the author herself or author himself. However, the structuralist approach, in fact, proposes that there is no essential connection between the author and the creative expression. In fact, the structuralist approach argues that the text exists independent of the author. So once the text has been created or has come into being, the author actually becomes relevant. And text starts to exist in its own right as an independent entity, right? So that is why I said in the beginning that structuralist approach considers a text as a structure in itself, right? So the famous claim, comes like this. So the structuralists have tried to persuade us that the author is dead, right? So that is a famous expression by Ronald Baths, actually, who first time gave this expression to other literary critics and writers and theorists. That is, that we should consider the author of a work dead as soon as the work has been created. Only then we can understand a literary text in its entirety, when we consider the author of that work to have died after the creation of the work. So over here, there is reference to Ronald Baths. In a 1968 essay, Ronald Baths put the structuralist view very powerfully and argued that writers only have the power to mix already existing writings, to reassemble or redeploy them. Writers cannot use writing to express themselves, but only to draw upon that immense dictionary of language and culture which is always already written, to use a favorite Barthesian phrase. Okay, so the literary text that we have in front of us, according to Ronald Baths, what do we find in that particular literary text? Okay, so students, if I ask you this question, you have a literary text in front of you. What is the most primary thing you find in that literary text?
Its theme.
Okay, what is the most primary theme? Is something that you draw out of what you read. But what is the most primary thing in the text?
What, sir? Loves
Is it? Say
The
it again.
expression,
Huh?
the expression,
Expression. Yeah, we can be a little more
vocab.
material.
Language,
What is it?
language,
Language. Okay, all right. We can also say language or we can say writing. Okay, so language can exist in many forms, right? It can be oral language, it can be written language. Similarly, expression can exist in many forms. It can be oral expression, it can be written expression. But writing, okay, writing is the most primary thing
sir,
in a text.
diction.
Okay,
Can you
well,
say
diction also is a little different from writing, you know. So diction or writing can contain quite a number of dictions. Okay, diction again is our understanding of the writing, but writing is the most primary thing. I mean, writing of all sorts, right? You know, literary writing, non-literary writing, creative writing, non-creative writing, fictional writing, non-fictional writing, right? So writing might have so many forms. So writing is the most primary thing that we see on the page, right? And Ronald Baths,
Sir,
yeah,
sir, can you please elaborate it? What do you mean by writing? Like writing is saying that the way it's written,
yeah.
or okay,
What you can see on the screen right now is the writing,
okay, okay, okay.
just a
Thank you.
written, something written. Okay, that is the most primary thing that we see on a page, right? So Ronald Barth's view is that the writing that we come across in a literary text, that writing in fact is the reassembling and the remixing of the writing that the author came across in her own real life. So when a writer sits down to write a piece of literature, the writer's role in creating that book is only to this extent, that the writer mixes and remixes and assembles and reassembles the language structures which the writer has come across in her real life. What we call the expression, the writer's expression, it is nothing more than rearranging what has already been written, which has already been written by other people, right? Now, this is Ronald Bath's view about a literary text. That is, on the page, what we find is nothing new. The writer has not created something out of nothing. Rather, the writer just rearranged the pre written phrases and the pre written sentences and rearranged them in such a manner that the text might sound new to us. But if we look at its basic structure, which is the writing, you know, writing makes the text, right? If there is no writing, there is no text. So if we look at the most basic structure, which is the writing, then that writing itself is mixing and remixing, arranging and rearranging, assembling and reassembling of those uh, written expressions which the writer came to know or came across in her own learning process, right? So this is the structuralist view of a literary text, right? Do you have any question about it at this stage?
So basically, like what I've understood by far is that the structure of the Barth is basically saying that a structure of any text, it exists already, so there's nothing new to any literary text that exists in the world, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. So there is a rearrangement of the writing which already exists. Yeah. So if there is any newness, it is only to this extent that this writer has arranged those phrases and sentences and those sentence structures in a new way. That is the only newness. Otherwise, at the language level, at the level of writing, it is the same writing which already exists. Okay, and it is easily, understandable as well what Baths is saying, because language is always learned, right? Language is always acquired. Language is what we learn. Language is never uh, some, it's not something which is just inspiration. Rather, language is acquired. We learn it. We learn the phrases, we learn the sentence structures, we learn the shorter sentences, longer sentences. So basically, we are not creating anything when we are writing as a creative writer. We are not essentially creating anything. Rather, we are mixing and remixing, hashing and rehashing the sentence structures and language forms and words and phrases which all we have already acquired. Okay, so that is the structuralist view of the text, right? And of course, this view denies the inspirational creative expression which we are otherwise aware of, right? uh, Structuralist approach denies that, right? So it is a very calculated and mechanical way to look at the text, right? You might agree with it, you might not agree with it, right? But this is what structuralism is, right? Now there are various ways to approach, structuralism. One of the ways is informed by the linguistic background, right? So the Swiss linguist, the Saussure, in his famous, compilation of lectures, is called Course in General Linguistics. Uh, he gave us some basic views of language, which are called linguistic views, which lead us to the conclusion at which other structuralists like Ronald Baths reaches. Now, one of those primary views is this: Saussure started studying what is the what should be the focus of studying language when we study language. In other words, what kind of investigation do we undertake when we do linguistic investigation? Now, he posed this famous question: what is the relationship between words and things, right? I hope you can all easily imagine the importance of this question. What is the relationship between words and things? Now, for example, when I speak the word book and you are able to listen to it, okay, you might be able to imagine the meaning of the book as well, right? But the word book that I spoke, the word book does not contain the book, right? The word book does not contain the book. Rather, you, your mindset, your learning process, or whatever training you already have got, your mind made an association between the word that I spoke and the thing you thought, right? So each one of you, when you listen to this book, this word book, definitely thought of a book, right? But if you compare the kind of book each one of you thought, probably the structure of that book, the form of that book, the shape of that book, the size of that book will be different in all cases, right? So therefore, the Saussure had a very legitimate question: what is the relationship between words and things? It appears that the relationship between words and things is not absolute. Why is it not absolute? I demonstrated that through this thought experiment that I just did with you, that I spoke a word and I explained it to you how the word does not contain the thing book itself, right? Rather, your minds made an association between the word that I spoke and the thing that you thought. Okay. So when this is the case, when the word that you listen to does not essentially create an absolute picture of a thing in your mind, then we say that the relationship between words and things, it is not absolute. Because why? Because all of you did not think of the same thing when you listen to this word book, right? So he makes a fundamental distinction between Lang and Perol. And the distinction is like this, that there is one thing that we call language system, which pre-exists actual example of language and the individual utterance. So Lang is the social aspect of language. It is the shared system which we unconsciously draw upon as speakers. Parole, on the other hand, is the individual realization of the system in actual instances of language, right? So Lang, therefore, is the system of language, or it is a language system which we all share, and we draw upon that when we speak in our real life, right? Parole, on the other hand, is the individual system, is the individual realization of that system in the real life. Okay, so all those phrases, all those sentence structures, they pre-exist. For example, grammar. Okay, now right now we are on a second point. The first point about the relationship between words and things, I'm done with it. Now this is the second point over here, which is the relationship between Lang and Parole. And what is Lang, what is Parole? So Lang is the pre-existing system of language which we unconsciously utilize to speak a language, while Parole is the individual realization or individual utilization of that system in actual speaking patterns. Okay, so we keep speaking, in day-to-day life. We keep making sentences, right? So for example, I speak this word, that is a book, right? I speak this word, this sentence, that is a book, right? Now that is a book, this sentence, this is the Parole, because this is the way I chose to arrange these words. That is a book, right? But in order to make this sentence, I made it very quickly, right? But in order to make this sentence, in order to make this meaningful sentence, I utilized the system of language which pre-exists, which exists outside me, right? Which exists in society, which I am aware of because I went to a school and I learned English language, right? So there were all those people who were also learning English language. We all put together, and all those people who speak English worldwide, they, they, they share that system, and they agree on that particular system of language, right? So you, we take uh, our language, our sentence that we speak, like the sentence that I just spoke, that is a book. I took all these words from that pre-existing system. So the word that, the word is, a book. All these four words come from that pre-existing system. Not just that, rather the arrangement that I gave to this sentence, that arrangement also comes from that particular system, right? Now this distinction between Lang and Parole, it will become important as we move on over here. But if we right now connect it with the structuralist approach towards language, we will probably start understanding what Ronald Baths meant by the death of the author after the creation of the book, and what did he mean by the fact that uh, that uh, that the book, or a creative text or a written text, is the remixing of the pre-existing language. So basically, he is essentially saying that all creative writers, they practice parole, even if they practice parole, but they always utilize the lang, right? So all of the creative writers have access to that lang, that system of language, right? And they use the structures from there in order to individually write something. And when they write something individually, that is the use of parole, right? Okay. Now, a third related point in Sasio, in so we are becoming aware of the linguistic background to structuralism, right? Now over here, the third point, I kind of explained this point to you already, but now here is little more explanation about that. So Sasio rejected the idea that language is a word heap gradually accumulated over time, and that its primary function is to refer to things in the world. In his view, words are not symbols which correspond to referents, but rather are signs which are made up of two parts, like two sides of a sheet of paper. A mark, either written or spoken, called a signifier, and a concept, what is thought when the mark is made, called a signified. The view he is rejecting may be represented thus. So look at this, equation. Symbol is equal to thing, right? So I just demonstrated that to you. So the word book is a symbol, right? I spoke it for you. But the word book is not the thing, right? So the thing which is produced in your mind, the image of the thing that is produced in your mind, is not necessarily, you know, uh, similar for all. Therefore, there is no absolute connection between the symbol and the thing. So then, what is the language? This is Sasio's model. His model is like this: sign equals signifier and signified. So the language we speak is not full of symbols pointing out absolute things. On the other hand, the language we speak is system of signs. Now, what is system of signs? That is, every word we speak is a sign, and sign has two parts of it. One part is called signifier, and the other part is called signified. So when I speak the word book, a book, that is a signifier, and the image of the book created in your mind is called a signified. According to Sasio, that is how language works. The language we speak is a system of signs, and each sign is divided into two parts, signifier and signified. So things have no place in the model, right? So it's not about the things. The language we speak is not about the things, right? We keep believing that, well, we use the words for things, right? So rose for rose, and bench for bench, and plant for plant, a pen for a pen, a computer for a computer. No, this is, kind of a tacit understanding we have about language, that language contains things, but that is not the case. Things actually do not exist in the model of language provided by the Sasio. So the elements of language acquire meaning not as the result of some connection between words and things, but only as part of a system of relations, right? So there is no essential connection between words and things. There is no pre-given connection between words and things, right? But there is only a relation between both of them. So consider the sign system of traffic lights, and that relation works within a system, right? So basically we should say that there is a system of relations between the things and the signs. We can understand it with the help of one of the most important and most common use of sign in our day-to-day life. That is the traffic signal. So the red, amber, and green. So red, the color red is a signifier, and its signified is stop. So the color red, therefore, dictates an action, and the action is to stop. Now, the relationship between both of them, red being stop, the relationship between the signifier red and the signified stop, that relationship between both of them operates because of what? Because of the system, right? What is the system? System is that of traffic signals. So somebody or group of people, they deliberately created a system of relations between certain light colors and the intended actions, right? So that group of people or that group of experts or technicians, they created that system and then they introduced that system worldwide. Therefore, people all over the world, almost all people all over the world, agreed on that system, and thereby the meaning of the word red became stop within the system of traffic signals, right? So it is important to mention over here that outside this system of relations, outside the traffic system, the word red won't signify the action of stop. It might signify something else, right? It might, signify in some cases a revolution, right? Or the red might signify violence, blood, so on and so forth. But within this system of traffic signals, red means stop. So this was the Saussure's discovery that all language that we are aware of, it is full of sign systems. And when we speak language, we speak within a certain sign system. And when we speak with each other, we are mutually aware of the sign system within which we are speaking. And thereby, automatically, we keep assigning the meanings, or we keep assigning the signifieds to all the words that we speak in our day-to-day life. So look at it, the sign signifies only within the system, right? Just within the system, the traffic signal system. So red is stop, green is go, right? And amber, prepare for red or green, right? Now, so the related idea was that this sign system works through difference, right? So we will begin in the next class from this point of difference, right?